Good evening. Go ahead and call this evening's meeting to order, Tuesday, February 25th, Chambersburg Area School Board, Board of Directors, regular meeting. Please rise and join me with a Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Last Tuesday, the board did meet in executive session. Actually, it was a dual session. It was executive session for contract negotiations and a workshop session last week. And then we met again this evening prior to the meeting in executive session, again for personnel matters. So item 2.03, approval to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. Motion and second, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Haydick, second by Dr. Diller. Any questions, amendments, revisions to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, do a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, so moved. Item 3.01, Superintendent's Report. Mr. Bigger.
Yep, thanks, Mr. Norcross. March 14th and 19th are now school days. We hope this 50-degree weather we're seeing this week is the end of delays and cancellations. Pending no additional weather days, we are on track to maintain graduation on May 30th, and certainly we won't have to make up any additional days, hopefully. Staff will come in, certainly on June 3rd and 4th, to make up in-service days that were lost throughout the calendar. Even if we have one or two more weather days, graduation's not changing. We have some strategies to be able to make up hours if we have to. So at this point, we don't see graduation having any changes to it.
May 30th and
May 30th is graduation.
both?
29th is usually the CMS, yeah. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. We have two presentations tonight as we continue down our path on schools of distinction, so I'm looking forward to the mid-year data update and the special education presentations for tonight. We also have a downtown center ribbon cutting event this week on Thursday, which you are all invited to. So I hope you can attend or at least come down at some point and check out the downtown CEC Center. Our hiring process is going very well. I want to thank everyone involved, from HR to the hiring principals and administrators, to Kurt and everyone who made this possible. We started a lot earlier this year. We started in December, essentially, once we approved positions and started the process in January. And I will say Kurt and I's highlight of the day are meeting the new staff and certainly welcoming them to the district on the same day they interview. So they're very excited to know on a decision whether they're being hired or not. And it certainly has made a difference to get to know our staff. So thanks to everyone as we get ahead of the curve on hiring. Newsletter went out digitally. It'll go out in print to all residents in the coming week. And we also had an updated website that was released last week as well. Do want to thank everyone involved in all of that work. Those are not easy lifts. Specifically, the website was a big lift. I do want to let people know there was a communication that went out this week and will continue. We're finally updating all the technology breakages and past bills people owe. So we apologize for being a little delayed in getting those out, but we are cleaning up some of the past with technology breakages. So if you get a communication or an invoice, most of them were under $100. Many of them were around just having the blocks and the chargers. But we do have some owed bills, so we're working through that process. And I do want to thank the tech department for spending a lot of time in detail and getting invoices out accurately and to folks starting this week. Last item is we'll continue to have informational sessions. So in March, we'll have Care Solace, which was a new program we started last year, along with the school counseling update and the PAYS survey. Our architects will be here next month as well to give us updates on the consolidation and grade configuration related to facilities. And then we get into April with the proposed final budget. We'll revisit the 1% resolution that has helped us look at grade configuration and consolidation. We will also have a proposal come to you about the teacher pipeline, starting with juniors in our high school all the way through teacher prep. So we're excited to bring that information to you. And then the final one up through April will be the food service CEP of moving everyone to lunches in secondary, free lunches in secondary, because we're already there for elementary. So we have a very busy spring agenda with informational sessions coming to the board. Before I release, Kurt has a few updates for you.
One, just a little bit more on the Chambersburg Engagement Center. Mark's going to be bringing you the flyers that folks will get at the ribbon cutting at 1 p.m. We do have a time frame where we're getting some pictures taken, and there is one photo op that any board members that come, we'd like you to be part of that. So that starts at 1 o'clock downtown. The second thing that I have tonight is kind of a fun thing. The Rotarians in town, they purchase a book, a hardback book for each kindergartner in our entire school district, but also Cumberland Valley Christian School, Montessori, Corpus Christi, and Shalom. We have most of the schools filled out with readers, being Rotarians, but we have 4 schools in our district that I didn't find a Rotarian for, so I was hopeful that we could get some of our board members to do that. I have Fayetteville, Hamilton Heights, South Hamilton, and Buchanan.
No pressure, you guys.
I already saw, I paused a minute because I saw 2 hands go up already. Hamilton Heights could really use 2 people because there's 4 classrooms, there's over 100 kids. Fayetteville, you could probably use 2 with all they have 3 kindergartners plus some other special ones. So if you want to, how about see me afterwards? It's the Cat in the Hat. It's kind of a long book. You can take one home to practice if you like as well.
Tough words.
So, yeah. But I have 2 so far, so I'd like to get 2 more people. Okay, come see me afterwards. We'll figure it out. Thank you.
End of report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bigger. You mentioned the plus 1%. I was gonna bring that up, and I will just for the board members. When we get down into new business, item 12, I was gonna bring that up, so I won't put it in my report next. As I mentioned earlier, last week, the board met for a workshop session. One of the items we discussed in workshop is the potential for a different student calendar. Nothing is set in stone, it's just early discussions. Some possibilities to that would be, it may look like same start to the school year, longer school days possibly, not as many of the traditional holidays. Half days would probably go away, and then there'd be more Fridays with no student days, and then probably extend the school year another week. Lots of variables in those discussions, but just want to get it out in the public as we communicate some of our workshop session topics. The other thing for tonight, tonight's meeting will look a little different because it's only one meeting this month due to winter, and we canceled last time. So normally for the past year and a half, we've done the first meeting as a committee of the whole, all presentations, no voting, lots of questions or more questions, and then at the voting meeting, it has led to less questions when we vote. Tonight, it'll be a combination probably of questions and voting. So it'll look a little different tonight, but that's just because of what weather did to us 2 weeks ago. And the other thing, I talked to Mr. Widman in the parking lot. If he gets caught on the video looking at his phone, he has my express permission because he's gonna give me basketball updates today. So, with that, item 3.03, NJROTC report, please. And welcome back. We haven't seen your group in a couple months, Commander.
We're on a once-a-marking period plan.
Yep, 4 times a year.
Once a marking period.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for having us.
So 3 Navy guys that fix the light.
All right. All right, thanks for having us. Our JDC unit has had a very successful year. So starting off, November 1st, 2024, we visited AHEC, or the Homage Heritage Center, down in, I believe, Carlisle. We did a color guard there, had speeches by retired military members. They had us breakfast there. It was pretty good, to be honest. And, they had presentations by World War II veterans, and we got a tour of their facilities. We're just there to show us. Moving on, November 11th, they do an annual parade where it honors veterans and active service members. Annually, we do a drill ceremony, kind of. So much in the parade, have a color guard, have a platoon, do drill there, show some support for veterans and active service members. November 12th, Lieutenant Teresa Hicks, the area manager of our area, presented our unit with the Distinguished Unit Award for the 2024 school year to our cadet commander. Then, November 13th, 2024, we visited Penn State Mont Alto, got a tour there, did a little ceremony with the color guard. Again, very good food. November 14th, 2024, Cadets Natalie Allman, Jameson Jacka, and Cadet Keg were recognized by the National Sojourners for participating in a Valley's Forge camp over the summer. So this is our cadet commander, or Cadet Hollinshead. She got promoted to lieutenant commander. And then November 23rd, very busy day, very successful day. We had a drill meet consisting of, I believe, 6 other schools. They came over, did a drill, and then, of course, we had help from Montezuma's, Meadows, Casa Agave, and Greencastle, and food donations from everyone else. Then right after the drill meet, the Chambersburg, they do an annual Christmas parade. We went there, again, did another platoon there, showing off a drill and all that. Then December 6th, the marksmanship team went over to Owen J. Roberts High School down in New Jersey. Placed 4th place overall, very successful. Then the next day after, actually did a drill meet in Manchester, New Jersey. Placed 2nd place overall, again, good. December 11th, we then had a winter formal where cadets could come together, get pictures, really just hang out. And then December 13th, this year we started up a Cyber Patriot team consisting of about 6 cadets. And they ended up placing in the silver tier, which I believe is the first tier in the tier list. And yeah, then December 20th, we hosted a Christmas party in the classroom for cadets to get together as a reward for hard work and for the year that they have done. December 27th, 20th, and 29th, the high school does with the wrestling team. They did a wrestling meet there, and we helped to volunteer, help out there. Very successful, a lot of work done. Then January 10th, NS1 squad drill. We started up a team. Because usually it's 2nd year and above cadets who can be on the drill team and go to the drill meets. So then we give the NS1s a chance, join a team, and they can really just get what it all is about. Then January 18th, we hosted the national qualifiers for our area. As a unit, we ended up placing 1st place overall, qualifying us to go to nationals in Florida, Pensacola, later in April this year.
Add to that, we're the only school representing the entire state of Pennsylvania.
Then, January 24th, our Cyber Patriot team ended up placing 2nd place in the silver tier at a competition. And then January 25th, 2025, we hosted the Area 3 Marksmanship Championship. We ended up placing 3rd place overall. I'm going to hand it off to Cadet Satut.
The Ice Fest is an annual community service event for the NJROTC. Volunteers manage the ice slide by helping kids on sleds and ensuring their safety while they enjoy the experience. Cassius cadets also perform sanitation duties as a community service project. Cadet Kiefer Finney was recognized at a ceremony for her winning essay in the American Legion essay contest and took 1st place in the area. Now she will advance to the regional competition. This year, freshman orientation was different because other students at the school participated in helping us give tours to the freshmen. Meanwhile, Master Sergeant and 2 other cadets were giving presentations to recruit some new NS1s for next year. And you are all invited to the annual passing review on March 5th at the Chambersburg Area Senior High School Fieldhouse. The time is at 9:30 a.m. And you are all also invited to the Red Robin's food sale. It's gonna help us. We get 20% we get 20% of all of what you purchase. It's on March 2nd, 2025, from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at 921 Norland Avenue, Chambersburg, PA 17201. That's all.
I would just like to say that this pass and review is something that as board members, anyone who is able to needs to be there, but also the community. It would be great to fill that field house with people for that pass and review. You just don't know what you're missing.
Thank you, cadets. Student government reports, CMS. Ms. Richardson.
All right, well, hello everybody. Usually you see Sahira up here, however, I am taking over now. So I am Katarina Richardson. Also, just as a side note, I have pastries in the back from the coffee shop standard by your house if anybody wants any. They're back there for you guys afterwards.
Come back anytime.
Just as a little side note. But of course, I'm going to be representing, I am president of the Student School Board at Career Magnet School. So since January, we had a PTSA fundraiser. So PTSA is a top provider at CMS. They provide us a lot of money throughout the year, including graduation, prom, and a few other projects throughout the school year. So right now we're doing a fundraiser with PTSA. It's going to be, as you see on the screen, Mariana subs and pizza. So of course, orders are due March 14th. So right now students are raising money for and selling subs for the school. And then this money, of course, is going to provide us with future funds. So since PTSA, they don't have their big fundraiser that they usually have, which is the at the VFW. This year, they're not doing it. So this is going to be a substitute for that for us to raise money throughout the school year so they can provide us with funds in the future and, of course, for their club as well. And then coming up, we have CMS Cares Day, CSD Minithon, and then prom planning. This presentation is going to be a little bit shorter. Right now, we're kind of in our calm before the storm with graduation, CMS full, and everything at the end of the year. So not a lot to really talk about. But CMS Cares, it's something that we're doing, bringing more into tune with the school. We want to make sure that we're taking care of our school and also the students there and showing them that everybody at CMS cares about each other. So that's an afternoon of academic support, volunteer projects, activities, and community building. So we're doing small things like the gardens around CMS. We have greenhouses that we're rebuilding and planting stuff in for the school. We're doing just different things. Last time we did Valentine's Day cards. So we're just kind of doing small little things, just showing people that we care. We've done things for our teachers, other students, counselors. We're just planning different things, just kind of providing support for the school and the students that are there. And then also we will be DJing Minithon this year. CMS, our DJing club has started back up, so we will be DJing Minithon on March 21st. And then we are forming committees right now, planning for spring events. So whether this is graduation, our senior send-off, which is a big event for our seniors, of course, and then just smaller things around the school that we're planning just for, of course, and then CMS Full as well is another big thing that we're planning right now. We're getting shirts in order and everything like that. And that's about all. Just a small presentation because we're kind of right now in our calm little area. But yeah, that's all I have to present.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Carly Skoltedi. I'm our student government president at Cassius. So today I'm going to go over our Minithon. So it'll be taking place March 21st at the Cassius Fieldhouse. It's going to be going on from 3:30 to 9:30 in the afternoon. Our Minithon is a fundraiser to raise money for the 4 Diamonds, and the mission of the group is to conquer childhood cancer by assisting children and their families through care, support, and research. So last week on the 20th, we had stall day. So during periods 1 through 3, students can bring in spare change, and it requires teachers to have to count all the change, which stalls our first 3 periods of the day, and all money will go to Minithon. This year we raised $5,121.67. Wow. So our Trojan Care fundraising, a couple weeks ago, we had, during a game, we had a Trojan Care night, and we had a donation table set up online and in person, and also a halftime game, which a bunch of little kids came out and played, and we raised $306. We also are selling shirts right now to the faculty at Caches, and I'm not sure how much we've raised. I wish I was on here, but we've been doing pretty well in that, and we're also looking to extend it to the rest of, oh my goodness, the rest of Chambersburg. Sorry. Other things that we're working on that aren't on here is planning the baccalaureate for Caches and color day and prom. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for the student government reports. Section 4 of our agenda, again, this would normally be the Cal meeting where we'd have these presentations, but we're having one meeting this month. So 4.01 and 4.02, Mr. Bigger.
Yep, I think we have Mr. Whitman up for both of them. He's going to kick off and end, I believe, both presentations. So Kurt and teams, looking forward to the presentations. And they've practiced a few times before tonight, so I'm excited to see what they bring to the table.
We got an uphill battle, Mr. Norcross. It's 21-13 after the first quarter. Just letting you know. All right, so Mr. Bigger polled the board. This is for community knowledge, things that they want to hear a little more information on. And the number one topic was data related to our goals. So we are narrowing it down a little bit this time. We are going to focus on our first goal, all students reading, writing, comprehending by the end of third grade. So that's what we're going to be talking about this evening. A little bit later, you heard a lineup of information. The high schools are going to be talking a little bit about what's going on there at a later presentation. Right after this presentation is another topic the board want to hear more about, special ed, by the numbers, and cost drivers. So that'll be the second presentation right after this one. I do have two folks here this evening helping me with this presentation, Lindsay Breslin and Dr. Sarah Herbert. So thank you to them for stepping up and helping out this evening. So this is our mid-year data report on the path to schools of distinction. That's definitely a theme that you're hearing from our CSD Blueprint Committee. And when I wrap it up, I'll specifically talk a little bit more about our Blueprint Committee. And it is not moving for me. No, it's on. Yeah, so I need it to go. Oh, did it? Okay. All right. So the second slide here, all students will read and comprehend by the end of third grade. So we're going to discuss tonight how we're going to get there and how will we know if we have arrived. Since we will discuss the current data, what metrics we are using to measure this goal, what data we use to measure and why. We will also look at where do we stand mid-year and year over year. So how do we compare to the past? We will discuss how we're currently attacking the goal. And finally, we will end with where we need to go to disrupt the status quo. Spoiler alert, although we are seeing slow growth and some growth year over year, it currently isn't going to get us to where we want to be by 2030. And that's all students reading and writing by the end of third grade. So let's get to the presentation, and we're going to start with Dr. Herbert.
So what you're looking at here are 3 different ways that we are looking at measuring how do we know if the kids have gotten to that goal. Do they need to reach all 3? No, they need to get 2 of those 3. So what are those? One is called NWEA MAP, and that stands for Northwest Evaluation Association Measure of Academic Progress. So NWEA MAP is kind of what we refer to that as. And that's an assessment that's given 3 times a year. The next one is Acadience Learning, and that is a measure that is given to our kiddos in grades K through 3. And then finally, I'm sure you all know what the PSSA is. If you haven't heard that yet, we can certainly give you a quick education on that one as well. But that is also given to our kids in grades 3 through 8. So that's a quick overview of the 3 assessments that are given. Again, 2 of those are what we're looking to see as far as kiddos achieving to meet that goal. As long as it advances, I'm good. Sorry, this is a new tool for me. All right, so I'm going to start by giving you a little bit of an overview of MAP, which is our first measure that I just mentioned. For some of you, this is a new idea. You probably have not heard about it before. It's a little bit of an anomaly. So MAP is a nationally normed assessment tool that we use to gauge students' achievement and growth. And our students in grades 1st grade through 8th grade are assessed, like I said, 3 times a year. And basically, this gives us a general overview of their abilities. At the district level, it helps us to get a programmatic sense of what's working and what's not. At the building level, it helps us to understand their instructional needs. In the classroom level, it can help us to understand from an instructional standpoint, from a whole group learning perspective, what we need to maybe adjust. And then we can even drill down to the individual students to see what they may need to have improved upon. And what's great is there are actually parent reports that we can share with parents at conference time as well. So a lot of different tools that come from MAP that are great for us to share. And then there are 3 instructional areas that are associated with MAP that we can look at a little more in depth. That is reading literature, reading informational text, and vocabulary acquisition and use. All right. Okay. So while it has all these fancy reports, it didn't have exactly what I wanted to share with you tonight. So I took a lot of information. Lindsay worked with me on this to compile a more historical look at what we felt was more important for you to, as a board, get a sense of how our kids were doing. So we decided to create these charts, so to speak, that you're looking at. Now, even though the kids in grades 1 through 8 are the ones that we assess, what you're actually looking at in front of you, we've only given you up to grade 3. So I just wanted to point that out to make sure that was clear. So on these 2 charts in front of you, you're looking at growth for our district for middle of the year on the left side, and then end of the year, just so you can kind of get a sense of where we are on the winter assessment, and then hopefully where we're headed at the end of the year. So that's why the last blocks are blank. We don't have the 24-25 yet. Hopefully we're getting there and can get that filled in for you at the end here. Just a couple things to point out to you that I noticed when I was looking over this chart. I don't know if you noticed, but in the orange, the cohort started out really strong with their growth at the middle of the year, but then it kind of slowed up. Orangish yellow, sorry. It was orange on my screen when I was looking at it. And the same idea kind of happened with the middle of the year for the pink. They started out really strong, and then they kind of teetered off there as well. So it'll be interesting to see. We're kind of seeing the same trend there for end of the year with the yellow group and the pink group. So when we get the end of the year data, it'll be interesting to see if that trend continues. So just some things for us to kind of keep track of as we're looking at that growth. All right. And then the next chart that we pulled, we wanted to look at achievement. So that was growth, and this is achievement. And I should mention, when we were looking at growth, let me go back a second, actually, I'm sorry. I did want to point this out. When we were looking at growth, we were actually looking at kids that were not only meeting their growth, but exceeding it. So these were kids that were closing the gap. So this is a group of kids that were really achieving growth at a much greater rate than many of their peers. So that's actually what we're reporting here. So this is actually a really good thing to see, like in the 22-23, that group that got 50%, half of our kids in that first grade group were growing at a really great rate. So I did want to make sure I pointed that out. All right, from an achievement perspective, again, we pulled this information from MAP because, again, I wanted to give you that historical data. These kids, again, are achieving at a slightly above average expectation. we're trying to give you that perspective of the kiddos that are doing a little better than what we would expect. If you look at that, yellow, not orange, middle of the year, they're fairly steady in their cohort as you look down. And then again, in the end of the year, they had a little bit of a drop off. The pink, again, they started out strong and then had a bit of a drop off. So again, we're just trying to start to watch these trends. And what's interesting is now that we have started these charts, it's going to be interesting to add to them over time and see where those trends lie so that we can make further adjustments to our instruction. So this is kind of a new piece that we've just tried to start adding to. So it'll be interesting to see how everything comes together in the next couple years as we continue to add to these charts. Now, the next thing that I'd like to show and share with you is the projected proficiency piece. And this is actually what our measurement tool is based on when we were talking a few moments ago about the metric. And as you look at these two charts, it's showing that we have roughly 52% of our kids projected to be proficient or advanced on the PSSA in 22-23, and 54% of them to be proficient or advanced on the PSSA in 24-25, based on their middle of the year test, and that would have been what they had just taken in January. So when we're looking at this, about half of our kids could be proficient or advanced based on what we're looking at right now. And what's interesting is MAP actually had done a study in 2021 where they correlated PSSA results with their MAP assessment to see if there was an alignment. So we know this to be a pretty valid study. So at this point, when we say that there's a projection, it's a little daunting to look at only half of our kids are there, but that means we have work to do, and that leads us to the plan that we're working on. All right. So, on to Acadians.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm going to talk about the second metric. So this is the second assessment, not the second metric, the second metric measure. So Sarah talked about the MAP assessment. I'm going to talk to you about the Acadians reading assessment, because this is metric measure number 2. Remember, our students have to meet 2 of these 3 metrics in order to be considered reading by the end of 3rd grade. So our metric for this is that on the Acadians reading composite score, they need to be at benchmark or above benchmark by the end of 3rd grade, and that's a 301 or higher. I'm going to explain that a little bit more. So Acadians is our universal screener. This is our assessment that every student, K-3, gets 3 times a year. And for the parents in the room, this is like a well child checkup. So every student takes that screener at their grade level 3 times a year. And that screener measures the basic reading skills and behaviors students in that grade level should have at those 3 different times of year. So this is a great way to say, if you were, as a student, this is showing how do I measure up against where I should be as a 2nd grader when I take the 2nd grade test, or 1st grade or 3rd grade. And it's worth mentioning, too, that the Acadians test, we're going to, from a district perspective, look at the reading composite score, because the Acadians screener itself is made up of a bunch of different little tests. So they test a bunch of different sub-skills. The reading composite score is the overall number. So we test things in Acadians at different times of year, like oral reading fluency, nonsense word fluency, comprehension measures. So these are all within the test, and they change throughout the year for students. So the test that a 1st grader takes at the beginning of the year might be slightly different at the middle of the year because they're ready to move on to the next measure. So I want you to keep that in mind when we look at the next data slides. So Acadians doesn't have as lengthy a history in our district as MAP does. We've only really been using this for 2 years. So what I'm showing you here on this screen is the data that shows the number of K-3 students that are at or above benchmark. So I have 23-24 on the left, and then I have 24-25 on the right. So you can see where they start at the beginning, middle, and then where they get to at the end of the year. But I would caution you, this is what we caution, we talked about this a lot with our principals this year. I want you to look specifically at, let's say, first grade. The first grade test is very difficult to look at and say, okay, at the beginning of first grade in 24-25, they were sitting at a 39% at or above benchmark, but at the middle of the year, they were 44%. That's definitely applaudable. However, the test adjusts and change. So the power becomes looking back at what we were doing at the middle of the year last year. So we were 44% at the middle of this year. Last year at the middle of first grade, we were at 46% because we're comparing like assessments there. The assessment was the same for those students. This data is very interesting and very telling. If you look specifically, there's a couple things I wanted to highlight for you. So if you look at the 23-24 first grade beginning of the year, you can see that we started the year at a 38%. But if you go over to 24-25 and look at your beginning of the year second graders, we made a huge gain in that class. You started first grade at 38%, and at the beginning of your second grade year, you moved to 58%. That's a big deal. So it's something to highlight. You also, if you look at your beginning of the year second grade, 23-24, I'm at that point in my life where far away is better with glasses and sometimes without. So at the beginning of the year in second grade, we had 53% of our students in 23-24 that were demonstrating at or above benchmark. If you go to your beginning of the year third grade in 24-25, they were at a 57%. So we were kind of holding ground with some of these kids. I'm only highlighting this because we're painting a picture for you tonight of our reading data. It's where we are. This is what we are moving incrementally as best we can. But there are some interesting anomalies, I think, in our data that we keep studying. Again, the last column on the 24-25 data is not filled in at this point because we will not be assessing them until the end of their year. Now, metric measure 3, the one that's probably new to all of you, just kidding, is the Pennsylvania System of School Assessments, the PSSA. So for students to meet this metric measure, they would need to score proficient or advanced on the third grade ELA PSSA. So if you're doing the count in your head, measure 1 is your MAP assessment, measure 2 is your Acadience assessment, and measure 3 is your PSSA assessment. So let's see where we stand now. If we held this metric, our district developed metric up against our 22-23 students and our 23-24 students, obviously we can't do it yet for 24-25 because we don't have a complete data picture. This is where you can see we stand. I know those little numbers are small, so if you're in the room, look at the blue. So the blue in 22-23 was 40%. So 40% of our students in 22-23 would have met this metric based on those 3 assessments. In 23-24, 46% of our students would have met this based on our metric. This is where we are currently sitting. So I just wanted to make sure you could see that because this is the metric we're going to continue to use as we move forward on our way to getting all students to read and comprehend by the end of third grade, which you can see is going to be a tall task. So I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Woodman to wrap us up.
As I said at the start, I was going to talk a little bit about our blueprint. And just a reminder, our blueprint, the 6 pillars are up on the screen. As it relates to the school, I'm really going to hone in on 2 of those, early childhood and governance and accountability. So what have we done so far to increase student achievement? This is the first year, if you remember my last data meeting, I talked about it was the first time that we assessed all kindergartners coming in. So we did that, so we know where to start with each child. So we're very happy to keep going with that. We created a new schedule in the elementary this past summer that includes win time, what I need now. This win time is 30 minutes each day that is devoted to small group learning. This is on top of what they were doing before in their reading and ELA classes. that is devoted to small group learning, meeting the children in small groups where they are. We've hired more interventionists. Each year, we're still looking to do that. If you remember, we did a $2.6 million staffing enhancement presentation that we approved, and we are moving some of those hires forward right now. And we are refocusing our interventions on the primary grades of especially K1 and 2 to close those gaps earlier. We've also hired 8 deans, technically 13, but 8 deans that will be doing intervention as well at our smaller elementary schools. 50% of their time will be doing a lot of building management. 50% of their time will be helping out with intervention as well. We will be bringing the other part of the 2.6 million staffing enhancement, the content specialists. We're going to be bringing those names in March. We're concluding those interviews right now. They will work with our staff for professional learning and to support all teachers at all levels. We continue to have about a year or two, we started the data team meetings at each elementary school where each grade level meets with their principal, counselor, the school psych, and the teachers, and they look at each child and see where they are and what they need to do to keep moving those forward. What do we need to do next? Our biggest need, our absolute biggest need, is professional learning. That's a deficit right now. You know, snowman didn't help us there with the winter. We've lost pretty much the rest of our PD time, and now it's moved to the end of the year. So we need professional learning time to train each teacher, especially in those K-3 grades, on structured literacy, the basic foundations of reading. We need to train, no matter what they teach, they all need to be trained on structured literacy. So that's our biggest need, is finding the time to do that. We need to work with our daycares and our pre-Ks and First Start and our Head Start programs. That's going to be a big first task of our early childhood director. We are looking at adding 15, possibly 30 minutes more a day of instruction time for all students. We need to identify students of needs earlier, and that can start at the pre-K. Part with the special ed, moving kind of a little bit on to the next presentation, sometimes there's a delay. Our teachers are getting an eye on the student, and then we do a permission to evaluate. We'd like to see if we could get that started a little bit earlier when the students are at pre-Ks or First Starts or Head Starts, so they can enter our district already getting services if they need those. And we want to continue to implement our Walk to Read program that we started this year in 3 of our elementary schools, and we have plans to do that. Our initial first look is that is working extremely well. So that's what we need to do next. The accountability piece under governance and accountability. I know Mr. Bigger has gone over with the dashboard, the CASD dashboard, with all of our goals. It's actually over on the door right there. But it starts with the superintendent, his goals with you, and then the goals with Dr. Long and I. We've taken those goals with our principals. Each principal has a metric that they're working on. The goal this evening is one that every elementary principal has, as well as they have a math goal and a science goal and attendance goal. And if you go to the district's new website, so I'll put a little plug in for Christine Wogmuth, great job with her team. Everyone's getting used to the new format. Each school now has on their school webpage by the numbers, and it will tell you where they are in the alignment to the goals that we're talking about tonight. So if you go to, we'll say Sarah's school, Falling Spring or Guilford Hills, under by the numbers, it'll say what percentage of students are making that mark of the metric of reading by the end of 3rd grade. So bottom line, we still have much work to do. We do see some small improvements, but we really do want to attack the status quo and see some great improvements. We are all in on it, and it's being tied back to the CSD blueprint, the goals, and the execution of that blueprint. So if you have any questions, we'll gladly take those down.
Mr. Woodman?
Mike, can you give us a snapshot of what an assessment looks like for a 1st grader?
Yeah.
Which one?
How about I talk about Acadians first? So the Acadians assessment is an assessment that's given by a teacher to student, and it is there are a couple of different measures in first grade. They may have 3 measures at a time, where they have to read a certain set of words in a timed way. They may need to, at the middle of first grade, they're starting to do a retell, which is a big deal, and we usually see a dip in scores in the middle of first grade because they're learning how to retell. But it's not a lengthy assessment, it's a quick assessment, but you do it one-on-one, so it takes a little bit longer time. Do you want to talk about MAP a little bit? Okay.
So MAP's a little different. It is done via their Chromebook, and it levels based on how they answer the previous question. So if they answer that previous question correctly, it gets a little more difficult. If it's incorrect, then it backs off a little bit. So then that helps us to then see how they're performing based on how they're answering their questions. And we do that for both reading and math.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Then PSSA for ELA purposes is how many days long?
But not in first grade.
Starts in 3rd grade. What starts in 3rd grade? 3rd grade through 8th grade.
Thank you.
Yep.
My question is, one of the things I appreciate about MAP is you see the scores as a parent in the portal, and it's usually pretty quick. And if you wait enough months, you eventually get the PSSA scores as well. Is there an option to integrate Acadians at some point so that parents are also seeing those scores?
We've talked about that. There's still a lot about Acadians that we're learning, especially in their online management system, but we have talked about possibly uploading that in some way to Sapphire. The problem is, like I said before, the assessment changes a lot, and it's never one assessment. So, I mean, yes, I'm sure there's a way we could do it. I'm not sure what it would look like.
Maybe
but
it doesn't make sense.
Well,
so.
but what I would encourage though too is every student has an Acadians booklet. So for every parent in K-3, when you go in for parent-teacher conferences or talk to your teacher, they have a booklet, and the booklet's powerful. It's going to show you exactly how they scored. Very rarely do our teachers look at that overall reading composite score, because that's not what they need. They're drilling down into all those subtests I told you about. They're going back in the book to look at their mistakes. So that would be even more powerful than, say, a composite number in Sapphire. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So.
Makes sense.
Just from time, so MAPS is about 30 to 45 minutes, and Acadians is like 3 minutes?
Yeah, maybe a little longer.
3 to 5.
Yeah.
Thank you.
When you say 3 times a year, like September, January, May,
Yep.
somewhere around that time period? Okay, thank
So
you.
Acadians, you're doing those one-on-one.
Yes.
MAP, you can do the whole class at once.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as the power doesn't go out.
Rarely does in the borough.
What was you said identified with nonsense words, or what exactly is that?
So a student would see words. It really tests whether or not they are their reading skills. So instead of being able to memorize words like cat, dog, they're going to get words like bip. And can they say all of those sounds correctly? They're words that don't make sense. And it's a way to play with words to make sure that they're not just memorizing, but rather that they know all those sounds that are in a word and can put it together, even if it doesn't make any sense. So it'll be a whole list of words that aren't real that they would have to go through and read and blend. That's a really powerful assessment, because you're assessing. Oh no, I'm going to nerd out on reading stuff, but that's a really powerful assessment. You learn a lot about a reader looking at their nonsense word fluency scores.
Okay. I've been accused of such. That's why I was wondering. Find out what this is.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That was great.
Well done.
That was great.
So moving on to our second presentation this evening, I'm really just going to introduce the 2 folks that are going to start the presentation, and I'll give some financial summaries at the end. But it's titled Progress in Special Ed, and tonight we have our Director of Special Ed, Cherie Sullivan, and we have Dr. Emily Goodine, who is our 9 to 12 Special Ed Supervisor. So, Mrs. Sullivan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Widman. Good evening. I appreciate this opportunity to present to you. We are looking forward to it. We have several topics that we'd like to cover with you this evening. Our agenda is going to cover starting with the population growth of special education over the past 10 years. Also, those leading disability categories that are attributing to the growth. We'll dive into autism and look at our trend as far back as 2013-14 and where we're projected to land by 2028 with a reconfiguration of our schools. We'll also look at department operations so that you can see what we look like and how we work. We'll also see our student growth outcomes, Dr. Goodine will present on those, which will be a review of growth in PSSA and Keystones and PASA testing of our special education students. We'll then look at our internal audit findings completed by Devapar. They're an internal audit agency that worked with us at the beginning of the school year. Those findings, I think, were shared with you already. We also will dive into special education cost drivers. Mr. Widman will present those and our schools of distinction and how we're preparing for them in the future. Looking at our 10-year population growth, we'll go back as far as 2013-14. We can see here that our special education population was at 11.3%, while the state was at 15.4%. Moving up to 2023 and 24 school year, our population grew to 16.4%, and the state percentage was at 20.1%. We grew 5 percentage points, and so did the state. So everyone is growing along the way, not just us, it is in the state as well. Leading disabilities in Chambersburg that attributed to this state, us being above the state average growth, are those disabilities in autism, intellectual disability, and speech and language. Let's take a closer look at these disabilities under autism. As far back as 1920, we're going to look at the past 5 years. We grew about 3% to 17% in the 23-24 school year. Our data is always a year behind from the submission that we do from the state, so we're looking to the 23-24 school year data for each of these categories and all of our data here in the district. Looking at 17% for us under the autism category, the state at that time of 23-24 was just at 13.9, again, another 3% difference. So under the intellectual disabilities, we're holding our own in that category. However, we're topping out at 8.1%, which is 2 percentages over the intellectual disability for 6.1% at the state level. If you compare that to our speech and language services, it does make sense that when we have needs of autism and intellectual disabilities, that there is an increase in speech services. So although the range in the amount of students that we're supporting has teetered from 16 to 17%, the state is only at 13.9% in 2023-24, where we were at 17.6%. Looking at the autism trend and projection for the future, if you look at 2014, we were at just 10.5% of students with disabilities. Moving that up to the 23-24 school year, we rose to 17%. If we project into 2028 with our reconfiguration of schools, we're looking at potentially having 20% of students with autism in the district. Our department operations. How large are we? We're going to dive into this information with you tonight. It's a lot of information. We're going to start in the center of this diagram. So as we get started here, we have 17 schools. In each of our schools, we are supporting students with learning disabilities. In our elementary schools, we're also supporting students with autism, life skills, and emotional supports in our 3 largest buildings of Fayetteville Elementary, Hamilton Heights, and Scotland Elementary. In those buildings, we also have a range of services that we'll talk about later as we get into this diagram. But throughout the district, we are servicing 1,550 students. This number also is comprised of Franklin Learning Center students, which is roughly around 80 or so students, between 80, 85. There is a rotation of coming in and going out that exists. We also have about 50 students in our Chambersburg Virtual Academy, and we have another 50 students in probably outside placements such as River Rock, Yellow Breeches, and other treatment facilities. But that is approximately 1,550 students that we reported for our December 1st upload that we'll talk a little bit more later. Looking at, again, how big we are in our operations, we have 89 teacher positions. We have 4 vacant positions at the moment. Our teachers, again, are supporting those 4 large programs. All students who are identified for needing learning support services, autistic support services, life skills services, and emotional support. We have 229 support staff. Those are our teaching assistants, our paraeducators, personal care assistants who are working individually with students. Of the 229 positions that we have, we are filling about 40 of those with subcontractors at this time. That is a gap that we hope to close in the future with future contracts so that we can have district staff in all of those positions. It continues to be our goal to achieve as we move forward. We have 34 related service providers. Making up these 34 positions are 13 speech and language therapists. Of those 13 therapists, 3 positions are unfilled, and we're supporting with contractors to support the needs of our students. We have 9 occupational therapists, physical therapists, who are also supporting these students. At any given time throughout the school year, with the speech and language and the occupational therapy and physical therapy services, we're servicing at least about 600 students throughout the school year. We can range as high as 900 students in a school year for those services because it's a continuation of students being evaluated, entering the program, and exiting the program once they have achieved their skills. We also have 7 school psychologists. Those psychologists are busy evaluating students and also working on our school teams to support our students, our staff, and parent outreach so that we can provide safe buildings, safe support systems in place for all, and to have ongoing support for our teams and evaluation processes, such as MTSS, academically, behaviorally, and having their input. They're a valued member of the school team, as well as our 2 social workers who are supporting the 17 schools. These 2 social workers are under the special education umbrella. They're supporting our families with outreach, also utilizing the Solace Care that we've put into place, and they are also providing counseling to our students with emotional disturbance. And any other students who need counseling are also supported by them. We also have, in addition to all these supports and services, 3 behavior specialists. Our behavior specialists are trained in crisis prevention intervention, and they also train our staff who are working with students who need behavior supports or to form teams in our buildings to be able to support the wellness of the buildings with that crisis prevention intervention, de-escalation, and how to work with students that are escalated to de-escalate them. They also work in teams to support behavior and the efforts of the development of functional behavior assessments and positive behavior support plans throughout the district. We often share our wealth of these resources with the regular education in hopes of preventing future needs for special education. So, moving forward, we also have, with myself leading this department, our 4 supervisors. These supervisors are covering K-12 programs. We have a program supervisor for elementary, one for middle school, and one for high school. And the fourth supervisor is of program services for paraeducators, where that person is hiring, completing onboarding and training of personal care assistants and teaching assistants working in our classrooms and with individual students. Our supervisors, K-12 at each of the levels, they are providing instructional support and evaluating progress of our students to ensure that we're meeting within special education guidelines. Along with our team, we have 2 secretaries. Our secretaries have shared responsibilities for the finances of our department. They are not only budgeting and purchasing, but also providing payments to cover all of our 17 buildings and the department needs. In addition to these responsibilities, they also maintain student data in our student information system, which is Sapphire. That information system and the data that I'm sharing with you tonight is all from the data that they are overseeing and inputting on a daily basis to ensure it's accurate, up to date, and that it is submitted in a timely fashion to the state. So looking at how large we really are, I just want to share with you that our department is larger than every building in the school district, with the exception of Caches. Our department is also larger than Central Fulton School District, Fannett Meadow School District, and Fairfield School District. Right now, we'd like to branch out, and Dr. Goodine is going to share with you our student assessment growth on the PSSAs, the Keystone, and the PASAs. Thank you.
Good evening. So one thing that you will notice, you heard the last presentation and the ladies talked a little bit about assessments and metrics, and they mentioned the PSSA and they mainly focused on students being advanced or proficient. We talk about that achievement portion. As a department, we focus more on the growth of our students versus achievement. And part of the reason for that is when we're talking about special education students, they typically are performing 2 or more years below grade level. So it's really important for us to be focusing on their overall growth every year as we're monitoring them. And that growth is also built into their individual IEPs. They have measurable annual goals that we are tracking every single year through progress monitoring. Progress monitoring is when we are assessing them on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis in the areas of reading, math, or writing. We use a progress monitoring tool called AIMSweb, and that is something that we are monitoring and tracking as well. So when we also look at data, we look at the PSSA and the Keystone, but it's always from that lens of growth. So that's where we're coming from. So that's what we're going to talk about this evening. When we looked at our growth in the district, we did want to kind of compare ourselves to some other districts. We have some like districts listed up there, names that you've probably seen before, but these districts were selected to compare to Chambersburg in terms of their enrollment numbers and also their socioeconomic status. In digging into each of these districts and their demographics, honing in on that special ed piece, there are some distinct differences that we do want to point out. These districts in question all have varying percentages of special education populations. And that's important to note because the number of special ed students can impact their growth. The other thing that we found out too is in special education, we talk about tiers of support. There are 3 levels of support ranging from the lowest level, which is itinerant, the middle level, which is supplemental, and our highest level of support, which is full-time. Within these districts, we also have varying percentages of students in each of those levels. There are districts that have 70% of their students at that lowest level of itinerant, where other districts may have 40% at the lowest level or 50%. All of those things come into play when we're talking about their overall growth compared to us as well. So it's kind of comparing apples to oranges just a little bit. So when we look at elementary and we look at the PSSAs, grades 4 to 8, our special education student growth in the ELA and the science assessment is ranked #1. compared to these 9 other districts. So in the pool of 10, we are ranked number 1 with special ed growth. Our all student population, so when we look at all student population, that is considering our special ed students, but also our regular ed students. In those 2 tested subjects, grades 4 to 8, our all students are also ranked at number 1. So we're seeing comparable growth with our special ed population as well as our all student population. In terms of math PSSA, grades 4 to 8, our special education students are ranked number 2 in terms of growth, and our all student population is ranked 3rd. Okay, so we see some good growth happening there. If you shift down to take a look at the high schools with Keystone, we are seeing some challenges. We recognize those challenges, as you probably have heard and know. Caches is currently on ATSI. So that's a monitoring status, and they are on that status for various student groups, one being our special education population. CMS is currently on TSI, also for the student population of special education. So when you look at our Keystone scores, our strongest areas right now are the algebra and the literature. We are ranked, as you can see up there, in both of those areas, 8th comparative to those like districts. However, our all student population in algebra is currently ranked 5th, and our all student population in literature is currently ranked 6th. We're still seeing comparable growth when we compare the 2 groups together here in Chambersburg, but our ranking, is just a little bit different there. In terms of biology, our special education students are ranked 10th comparative to those other districts. But at the same time, our all student population is also seeing some challenges, and they are ranked 8th in biology. The other assessment that you'll see up there that has an asterisk is our PASA assessment. The PASA assessment is the alternate assessment through the state. This is an assessment that is designed for our students who have more intensive needs. There is an eligibility criteria that they have to meet. So our prime students that are taking the PASA are our self-contained autistic support classrooms, our students who are intellectually disabled. So we have 2.9% of our eligible student population in grades 3 through 7 taking that PASA. The data in PASA is just a little bit different because students are given a level that they are tested on, and it's not necessarily their grade level. It's based on their own individual level. And then the way they monitor those students is if they are meeting the target or they are above the target. So where you see the percentages there for 3 to 8, we have 45% of our students in ELA meeting the target or exceeding. Math is 38%, and science is 43%. In 11th grade at the high school, 11th grade is the only grade that takes the PASA at the high school, and we are seeing 73% at the target in ELA, 47% in math, and 33% in science. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Mrs. Sullivan.
Thank you, Dr. Goodine. Looking at our internal audit findings, it's really, this is a great opportunity to share with you our strengths in the audit findings, because the auditors, in order to understand how we operate, they had to look at our systems. And in looking at our systems, they're looking at our processes and our procedures. And so some of the highlights that we're sharing with you tonight are at the core of what we do. And when I say they're at the core of what we do, it's because if we don't do these things right, we fall apart. They don't match. There's missed monies. There's the opportunity for failure. So these are areas that tie us all together and make us really strong as a department. And so I'm just going to highlight a few of these for you so that you can see that we're running the core of the department really well in order to help support the vast number of supports and services that we have in place. We were commended for our structure and organization to reassess teacher caseloads and to be able to adjust accordingly when we need to for those caseloads. For example, if we have a teacher who has an autistic support caseload, they can only be given up to 8 students. So we have to continually watch when we have students moving in, students moving out, and to be able to repurpose, reorganize what we're doing in order to make sure, number one, our students are supported, and number two, that our teachers can do it within the caseload capacities that we're responsible for maintaining through the regulations. Another area that we were commended on was that they were impressed with our pre-referral process for speech and language services. Through this process, we developed a screening process where students would be given intervention at like a tier 2 when we talk about a multi-tiered system approach to supporting students without going straight to evaluation, but determine their skill levels and provide instruction for them at an informal level. This process can then lead to evaluation for our students. It creates balance among caseloads, plus still gives students intervention in a multi-tiered process that leads to evaluation, if and when necessary. They discussed also our communication of regulations, and we have that strong communication through our newsletters, our emails, professional development. Our supervisors hold weekly professional learning communities with our teachers. We also have outside agency supports coming in for development of programs. We have the Autism Initiative involved in the district to help support our autistic support classrooms. Those are just a few variations of how we provide support for the regulations, how to communicate correctly what we should be doing in our classrooms. We also have what is called Act 16 reporting. And that is when we report student expenditures. And this is completed, thankfully, through our business office. And they run an efficient process of collecting all expenditures for our students, for each and every student. All 1,550 of them are collected. And the importance of this is that the state has different buckets that these expenditures go into. So when we have a lot of high costs, we can submit for contingency funding and be reimbursed for those costs. Under data integrity, we've spent a lot of time in training and developing skills to do a better job with data integrity. That is the data that is going into our SIS system, the Sapphire system of student data. Our July 1st uploads are for students who are exiting from special education, and the December 1st are those students who have current working IEP documents. They are active students in special education. So our goal is to always capture 100% of those students, and that starts from the ground up. The services being in place, the IEPs and paperwork being in place so that we can upload them every December 1st, and that generates our federal IDA funding for the district and our programs. In addition to these strengths, we were also noted for the homebound and instruction in the home procedures that we have in place. They are efficient and they work. They work for students who have illnesses. Homebound and instruction in the home are not special education placements. They are placements and instruction given actually in the home because we have students with short-term illnesses who receive homebound, and those students with long-term illnesses or disease that may not be able to attend school at all receive instruction in the home. Through our transition coordinator, we have the support of that system in place, and it's thriving. So we're able to see who really needs it and what supports and services we can give them to make it all work out in their best interest in the situation that they're in. So in highlighting all these strengths, it is really important to still acknowledge that we have a lot of growth to continue. There's always room for improvement. And as we look to the future, we are going to explore other avenues and efforts to define other areas where we can exert our effort into finding new pathways for funding. And so from the auditors, it was suggested that we also look into our medical access funding. We believe that there are resources that we are providing that we are not billing for. So in the months to come, we are going to engage in exploring those options to generate more funding for our programs. With that said, Mr. Widman, now I'm going to turn things over to him so that he can talk about the special ed cost drivers for us.
So Emily is handing out a document right now, and this is for your perusal after the presentation. But I want to go over the first set of data points so you understand what you're looking at. So what you have in front of you are kind of small packets within one large packet. And if you take a look at the first sheet, that is what we call our 1200 zoning. That's overall the learning support, the special ed budget. Behind there, you will see sheets very similar that will accompany the overall budget. 5 sheets back will start the sensory support, which was basically our budget for students with autism. Then you'll see emotional support budget. That's our students with emotional support. Then you'll see life skills. That's our intellectually disabled students. Then you'll see multi-handicapped. And it'll go through our cost drivers over the last 10 years. And I know this is something that when we asked for this publicly, Mr. Norcross, you wanted to hear about our last 10 years. So if you take a look at the first one, that is from 2013 to the 23-24 school year. Then it has an expense bar chart behind that in different colors. The third sheet might be my favorite sheet out of the whole thing. This is the budget to actual. And you see a big jump this last year. We were challenged through several meetings to predict and project over many meetings with Tammy and her team and the special ed department. We believe we were as close as we could get with the projections for what's coming this year, and it was put in last year's budget. So that's why the big jump. We're hoping at the end of the year that we don't come back and ask for like $3 or $4 million for special ed. It should be quite a bit down from there. I know it will be because my secretary is not coming to me daily and saying we're running out of money already in the budget, because that happened my first 3 years in this position. So things are in much better shape this year because of what we did with the budget last year. But this is for your perusal. If you have any questions, if you would email them to me, I will, with what you're seeing here, because it's a lot of data. If you'd email them to me, I can put them in a Friday folder and put it under board questions. So we'll do that way. First off, I want to thank Cherie Sullivan and Emily Goodine for a great presentation. They have a lot going on this year. Tomorrow we have a comp plan meeting with a whole bunch of our staff members and community members in the evening tomorrow night. They went through an internal audit, and also they're going through a state audit right now. And all this while being short-staffed. So they're working incredibly hard. I've worked with 7 special ed directors since I've been here in Chambersburg, and I will tell you this group is top-notch. So very, very, very happy. So talking about some of the trends, you see right beside from 2013-25, it says straw trend. This is something that I'll give credit, Chris brought up the straw, because I was talking about all of the early childhood needs that we have right now. We have a lot of autistic classrooms in the elementary, life skills, emotional support. There are 3 buildings. Fayetteville alone has 92 special ed students in a building, so that puts them at about 37% of their student population is special ed. And so think of a straw, 3 parts. One part will be K-5, one part will be middle school, one part will be 9th grade, really to age 21. And right now, there is a ball bearing stretching that straw in the elementary division, because that's where most of our classes are right now. That's going to continue to go through the straw. That straw is not going to shrink back, because we are still seeing lots of students come in with a lot of needs. More students with autism, more students that are life skills and intellectually disabled, as presented earlier this evening. That's going to go to the middle level. We are going to need more teachers in the middle level. Then eventually, as they get older, it's going to be in the high school. On the other side, in gifted education, we're probably going to need another gifted education. We are finding more students with gifted needs. So that's the other end, just wanted to tell you about. So we've gone from 13 million to 32 million from 2013 to 25. You'll see that in the document that I gave you there. Some of this, Cherie already went through. Life skills, autistic support, has gone up the most. Speech is really correlated to, students with autism. Basically, every student that has autism is in need of speech services. We are currently short 3 speech teachers right now. They can't be found anywhere. Wilson is actually going to be helping us out starting a speech pathology program, which is going to be hopefully helpful to our area. But all districts are really in desperate need. I think the LIU, last time I heard, was like short 17 speech pathologists. So we are contracting out to the tune of about $400,000 for our speech services. And our compliance regulations, just so you know, students with autism in the elementary, if they're in a self-contained classroom, that classroom can only have 8 students. That is a regulation that we must follow, and you have to have 1 teacher and 2 aides. So when you think that's for a class of 8, that's about a $250,000 classroom. And Mr. Nelson, how many classes of autism do you have at Fayetteville?
7. 3 life skills.
And then I think they have 4 at Hamilton Heights, and how many at Scotland? 2. So you have, that's a lot of expensive classrooms, and that's one of our biggest cost drivers. As we move to our schools of distinction, I want to talk a little bit about the internal audit, and we're waiting on the state audit. Part of the internal audit, we are asked to look at our access billing, and they believe that we can find about another $350,000 to $500,000. So Cherie and her team are going to be looking at that. If that's true, we'll want to hire another access secretary for billing purposes, and that's all. We have one person right now that's all they do is access billing all day long, and sounds like we need another one, but we have to make sure that that is correct and the research is right. But if that would work out, the 3 things that the audit really is saying that we need could be cost neutral. One is a supervisor of program services. As you just heard me talk about speech, we have about 900 students that are in and out of speech during the year with move-ins and everything like that. So 900 students out of the 1,550 that are on their caseload need speech services. A lot of our students need occupational therapy and physical therapy as well. At this point, we really need to have, Cherie is doing a little too much overseeing, she's pretty much overseeing speech right now because her supervisors are too busy to handle that. We really need Cherie to be the orchestrator of the whole department, so we do concur with their findings that we really need a supervisor of program services. With that being said, I'm going to move into the grade reconfiguration. We would like to get that under control, and then when we do our grade reconfiguration heading towards our schools of distinction in 2028, that supervisor program services would slide into one of the 4 spots that you see here for the grade reconfiguration. So really that job ends up being the same. Who knows what we'll look like if we have exponential growth in special ed. We may need to hire an additional one, but right now our thoughts are that we can see that we can move that person into a grade reconfiguration. But that would be 1 supervisor K to 3, 1 4 to 6. The 7 8 would be about 1,400 students, but they would take on the caseload of the current number, about 85 at FLC, 85 very high need students at FLC, and then a 9 to 12 special ed supervisor. And then the last thing, we definitely, when we look at schools like us, their support department generally is a lot larger for how many students they have. We really need to have 1 financial secretary, 1 person that's their entire job, that they're not doing other tasks under the realm of special ed, whether it's filing, taking care of our student information system. We need 1 person that really is in charge of all the bills and receiving the bills. So we would like to have a financial secretary, and that would be part of next year's budget if we could do that. That really ends our presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask our team.
board members, questions?
I do have a couple questions. I actually looked through your internal audit that you guys sent over. And I noticed a couple things, and I hope it's okay. These are just questions for my clarification. I like to just start that at the beginning, because I'm never insinuating by any question I ask that I know how to do anybody's job any better than what you're doing. So please do not take it in that way. On the page 5, under the Act 16, I did notice 21-22 in the category of the 27,000 to 54,000, we had 133 students, and then that jumped significantly by almost 60 students to the following year. Was there something that went on? Was there like a reclassification? Did we just get that many more students that were identified? I was just curious.
Could you give me, I'm sorry, could you give me the year again that you had said that?
21 to 22, we had 133 students that were in the 27,000 to 54,000 demographic or range that's there. I have the here. And then that next year, it went up by almost 60 students in that same range, and everything else stayed about the same. I didn't know if you remembered if there was like an influx, or if you had new people that, or new students that were identified, or, it just seemed like a big jump for 1 year.
It is a big jump, and if you look back to that period of time, I think the opening of schools here and services for special education might have been a turning point for students returning to the district. That could have affected that funding piece.
Post-COVID bump.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. I think I didn't say the COVID word.
Yeah, we don't like to.
Yeah.
I did it for you.
Thank you.
And the only other question I had is when,
Yes.
let me see, Dr. Goodine was speaking. Do you know the percentages on the 3 different categories that you gave, the itinerant, supplemental, and full-time here in Chambersburg? Just out of curiosity.
The percentages for those,
Just for Chambersburg School District. She said that they go into itinerant, supplemental, and full-time is how they're broken down. I was just curious what they are here for this district.
This is 13, 14. I need that whole packet. I do have that data here. We have what is called, and this can be seen online, it's public.
Okay.
It's called Special Education Data Report Card. And so that's where I pulled some of our data from tonight, from this report card. I'll actually give you this copy here. But when you look at, it goes by special education inside of regular education, 80% or more. That's your itinerant.
Okay.
So those students were at 58.1%. The state percentage was 61.7%. For the supplemental, it was 16.6% we're at, and the state was 10.3%. And special education in other settings, which would be more like the full-time, is 8.7% and 4.4% for the state. This data sheet also gives you the enrollment, the LEA versus the state enrollment, and other factors on here. You're welcome to have this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Sherry, I've got one question. So when you're projecting the growth of special ed students, in particular autism, and it's such a large segment that is growing, it's on. Yeah, I'm on. And I'm curious about if we knew what was causing autism, we could eventually figure out if those causes are being mitigated in some way or eliminated, to know if our projections are going to increase or decline.
Absolutely.
What can you tell us about what's causing it, and can you see in the trending that it's going to?
Yeah, I don't actually know what's causing it, if I'm completely honest. There are many contributing factors, I believe, that are out there. There's greater awareness of autism and the characteristics of it. I would say that's the greatest contributor. There's also, no longer the idea that it's different. It's a part of society, so there's this acceptance, I think, that goes along with it. And I think what's important to note also is that autism varies, right? It goes from, to intensive needs to very independent and thriving individuals who, are like everybody else.
Yeah, jobs and families and everything.
Exactly. Right. And, who's to say that it didn't all exist before? Remember, years ago, we had institutions where students went because we didn't have autistic support classrooms. So I could probably write a whole book about this.
Please, I'll read
But,
it.
and I'll give it to you. You'll be my first person. Yeah, lots of variables out there. I appreciate your question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. The growth comparisons with the other 9 districts that are similar, our elementary and middle school numbers are pretty impressive. We're ranked number 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Our high school, on the other hand, is not. What do you attribute that to, and what are some of the ideas that your team is discussing about addressing that?
So we are actively involved in that, and I'm going to invite Dr. Goodine up here because she's been instrumental at our secondary level for those students in 9 to 12 and looking at their testing as well as their progress monitoring, because our progress monitoring does speak other volumes. And so I'll let you go ahead and take the mic.
Yeah. So, you know, in the rankings, I think it's important to point out too, when we're actually looking at the growth rate, our growth rate, we might be ranked low, but comparative to who might be number 1 and number 2,
Right.
it's not that big of a gap.
Well, and this is
yeah.
growth, not proficiency, too.
Correct, and it is very different because the high school is seeing an increase in proficiency rate, but the growth rate is not necessarily what they would like it to be. And for our students in particular, you know, when we talk about being 2+ grade levels behind, when you're learning algebra and your math level might be on a 5th grade math level or a 6th grade math level, it's going to be increasingly difficult for you to show growth in an area of like algebra. So we're working very closely with the ATSI committees at the high school to talk about strategies that we can implement, strategies with the schedule change with block in terms of supporting our students with remediation and intervention, additional professional development. We keep talking about in terms of accommodations and modifications in all environments for all students, not just special ed students, but also regular ed students as well. So there's a lot of good conversation around that right now.
I just want to add, I really do appreciate the correlation between all students and special ed. I think it's just not a special ed problem, it's an all student problem necessarily. So as we grow, all students are getting better with all kids, you'll see the performance go for special ed as well.
That's great. Thank you.
Yes, Mrs. Sullivan and Dr. Goodine, thank you for the presentation and for the board. When we discussed this in new business a couple months ago about having the presentation, and it was mentioned tonight in the presentation, how this has grown, not just on a financial aspect or impact, I should say, to the district, but also obviously the enrollment numbers, which show that. One unofficial metric that I thought of just this evening, listening to the presentation, in that when the president in the past year and a half, it's me, makes a comment at the beginning of the meeting that we had an executive session and we can't tell you what we talked about, and we're not going to tell you what we talked about. But one unofficial metric that I would like to point out tonight is that the executive session topics and discussions related to special ed are nowhere near what they used to be. The frequency of that discussion was almost monthly. And so I think that's a perfect tribute to our staff. And Mr. Woodman even mentioned it in an executive session about 6-8 months ago too, that we don't have these discussions and tough decisions to make in executive session that we can't get into more details on. But with that, so thank you ladies, but with that and the idea of some more administrative roles, I love the idea of getting the finances back into the special ed department. I think that's a good focus, and the supervisors. But I think Mrs. Sullivan mentioned we still have these 4 vacant teachers, and Mr. Woodman's straw approach, that those 4 vacancies sounds like it's even going to grow. So as a board and as a district, similar to what we did maybe with food service and janitorial support a year and a half ago, what can we do as a board and a district to help that vacancy? We put a big, heavy focus on food service and janitorial, because for years on end, and Tom Dolan, God rest his soul, always mentioned it. But then we put a focus on it, and we seem to improve it. What can we do in the special ed department as a board? And that's a question for our presenters. What can we do? What could the board do to help with these vacancies?
Well, I'll take a little bit of that question. I know Mr. Bigger and I have been talking about one of the things that's happening right now is negotiations with CAA. We've been looking at, is there anything that we can include in the contract? Currently, I think the stipend for writing IEPs, they get 3 days, is that correct? And I think a $200 stipend. So looking at ways to incentivize some of our special ed folks would be something that we definitely need to take a look at. I don't know if Shree or Emily want to chime in yet, but there's absolutely been discussions about that, and I don't want to get too far into that with what's going on.
I'd like to thank the presenters and the opportunity to hear directly from the staff. And I've gotten so much confidence from seeing your professionalism and your passion with your jobs that I have no fears that if we give you the freedom you need, you'll get the job done, and it flows from the top down. And all the teachers that are working with these kids are going to get the idea that this is how it's going to work. So thank you for being that way. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for your continued support over the past 3 years. It's been excellent, and we're doing great things for kids. You're doing great things for kids with all the support you've given them. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, item 5.01, privilege of the floor. We'll start with those who signed in. There's only one member of the audience who signed in, but we will open it up like I always do. Mrs. Jordan, several agenda items. And Dr. Long will keep time for us.
I do have several agenda items. I usually have a script. I'm not doing that tonight. Personnel actions. I'd like to congratulate Melissa Cashdollar for her promotion. Her sister is my doctor. Mr. Nelson, congratulations. And anyone else who's getting a promotion tonight, congratulations. Your executive session agenda item. Some of this was actually brought up tonight, and I just thought about it the other day. And I was shocked when I realized that services drive a budget, not salaries. 21.8% of the budget are teacher salaries. 28.3% is all the salaries in this district. So services, which you heard tonight, drive the budget. The vendors, for instance, T-Mobile, a roofing contractor. Let's see, cyber charter schools at $8 million. If I could wipe that one out of the budget, I would, for every single person in this school district. That would mean we'd have more money for the children and the teachers. Let's see, what else? Under special ed, the salaries, okay? $10.2 million. Special programs, which are vendors, which I think was mentioned tonight, $32.3 million. So that's to my point. Vendors drive special ed. Vendors drive everything, and that is in every single budget, county, state, and federal. Approval of the bill list, which is your largest part of the budget. Again, vendors. not teachers. And lastly, let's see, I want to make sure, no, not lastly. Superintendent Bigger, please let me know when the district wins the grant reward for the solar. I'm hoping Fayetteville and one other school wins that award. It will help us. I just got solar on my house, and believe it or not, in two months' time, and you might laugh at this, but we have planted 7 trees. And let's see, here's a question. Can ICE just prance into our schools and take unaccompanied children with a federal warrant in hand away? That's for you, Superintendent Bigger, because I'm worried about that. And lastly, before
Thank
you
you, Mrs.
answer me,
Jordan. Your time has been-
lastly,
Thank you, Mrs. Jordan.
our governor has gotten the Trump administration to unfreeze billions in grants and
Thank
loans
you, Mrs.
to
Jordan.
all of us. So I'd like an answer,
Contact your U.S.
Chris.
Congressman, Mrs. Jordan. Thank you.
I do.
Any other members of the audience wish to make public comment? Okay, thank you. Group 7, the consent agenda. This is probably going to be the largest change this evening from previous meetings. Whereas we would have, lately we've had 2 consent agenda sections, 7 and 8. You can see section 8 is blank, so we're just doing 7. So the first part of item 701 through 7.21, are there any of those items that a board member wishes to vote on separately? And the reason I ask that question, we will then pull those individual items out. We would still vote on the remainder of the whole first, and then we'll do individual votes. I mean, if you want to pull, any individual items out, then we would vote on each one of those items individually.
I would like to pull item 7.12.
Okay. Any other items? Okay, so we will vote on items 7.01 through 7.21, excluding 7.12. Once, and I will ask for a motion in second, but before I do that, I'm going to follow the procedure we've been using with the admin team. Chris, your team first. If there's any of those items, again, excluding 7.12, that the admin wishes to maybe elaborate on or just provide any information ahead of the vote.
I don't see anything. I'm looking to Dr. Long and Mr. Whitman. That anything you want to highlight at this point in time?
Just for the board and the public, Job Corps is really a neat partnership that we're going to have, that it is free for students to go to this residential area. There's 2 of them within the state. They can earn a career while they're there as well, certificates, but also get a Chambersburg diploma by staying there and finishing their credits. So this is a real unique partnership.
Thank you, Dr. Long. Okay, any board members have any questions or comments on any of the items excluding 7.12 at this time? Okay, hearing none, I'd like to have a motion to approve items 7.01 through 7.21, excluding item 7.12. I'm gonna have nightmares about those numbers tonight. Motion and second, please.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Gogler, second by Mrs. Gauss. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved. Ms. Harbaugh will do a motion and second, and then we'll have discussion and questions on your item. So can I have a motion and second for item 7.12, please?
Move to approve. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Chair.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion by Dr. Diller, second by Ms. Harbaugh. Questions, discussions?
I'm asking that we table this particular item. I just received resource materials on Friday that I would like the ability to review before we would vote on this.
I second the motion.
All right, we have a motion and second to table item 7.12. Any discussions on that motion?
Yeah, I'm just curious. Can you share more details about what you received?
I requested the resource material for that class. This was provided to me on Friday wonderfully by the administration. I just have not had time to review it yet. And so I'd like time to be able to review that before we make a vote on that in particular. So I appreciate the effort that was made to get this to me so I could review it and the syllabus that came with it. So thank you to everybody that made that possible.
Any questions she had, we did put in the Friday folder, I think, last week regarding the policy surrounding this topic and subject. So all the questions she asked us, you have all the same information as a response.
If there are other board members that are interested in seeing it as well, should we borrow Stephanie's or request an additional copy?
I don't know the answer to that.
Well, since we won't go until, if we do decide to table this, it wouldn't be until March. I'm sure I can be done with that by end of week. I just need some time to do that, so I'm more than willing to hand it off to you, whoever would be interested in seeing that.
Hold on, Mr. Whitman, you have a comment?
Yeah.
Well, this vote was just for the curriculum map. There would be a separate vote for another time for the resource. But I will say this is a course that is part of RMU, the university that we have an agreement with. So they would want us to be using that resource. So I see how they're married, but I just want to let you know that this is approving a curriculum map that's been, we've had it on the display out in the lobby. So it would be two separate votes, though, eventually coming your way.
Yeah, and the reason that I don't feel comfortable approving the map is because there were certain topics that I saw on the curriculum map that I wanted to see how they were presented before I felt comfortable in even approving the map. And so with having this resource, I feel like I'll be able to get that information and be able to have an educated vote whenever we come up with that. So that's why I'm asking for it to be tabled, just so I have time to review.
I think that's a very reasonable request. The course to me looks fascinating, but I also see a lot of topics that to me are quite heavy. So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to see how it was being presented. So just for my own, edification to see how it's kind of coming across there. So once I get a chance to do that, then I'll feel more comfortable making an educated decision.
Sounds good.
I just want to comment, this is an elective, right? An advanced elective, and I think advanced electives need to be preparing our students to be in the world as it is. And there are a lot of uncomfortable topics in the world as it is. We should be able to be prepared to discuss them. But clearly, if people are anxious about what's in the curriculum and they're giving you that anxiety, then you need to be doing your due diligence as well. I'll be interested to know what you find out.
Okay, we have a motion and second. All those in favor of tabling item 7.12 until our next, well, we'll take it off the table at that time.
Yep, we'll add it to the.
We'll add it on the cow, and then it'll be
Yep.
a separate item in the following voting meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, and so moved. Before we move on, Mr. Bigger, you
Yep.
want to comment on
Thank you
708?
for those who stuck around. If you were just approved to get a new position or an existing one, please stand and just mention who you are real quick, just so the board gets to see who they hired tonight. I know there's many of you here, so just quick name, introduction if they don't know you, and your new position or a different position.
I'm Melissa Cashtaller. Yeah, I'm here. I know her too. No, just kidding. I have 3 of them. I'm excited. This is an opportunity. Drew and I were chatting quietly while we were listening to some of the presentations. And I moved to the community when I was a year old. And I've lived here. My own children have attended. One has graduated in college now, and the other is in my building. So she has been texting, when are you coming home? It's been a long day. I think that there's a testament to the process that we went through, which was really rigorous. Our colleagues that went through that process with us, which are incredible people, and devote time to this district every single day. So I'm up for the challenge. I appreciate the opportunity and your faith in me, and I'm excited to kind of continue an impact. So thank you. And I am approved to move from 12 years. I looked at the faculty this morning, a little teary-eyed when I told them I was on the agenda. 12 years as principal at South. All but 3 of 24 have been in that building. So my roots are middle level, so thanks. I appreciate the work. That was brief for what I like to do.
That was pretty good. Drew Nelson, currently the principal at Fayetteville. I've been there for 10 years. Been the principal at 7 elementary schools in the district. And at one point, I was HR director for 6 months when Sid Brockwood was on maternity leave. So we were talking, as Melissa said, about the opportunity that lies ahead. And earlier I was talking to Mr. Widman. I still have to focus on getting Fayetteville to the end of this year on a positive note and making sure we take the PSSA and have a good wrap up as I transition in. But I'm looking forward to it, and thank you for the opportunity.
I'm Gary Carter, currently the Director of Safety for the school district. I don't have near the resume that these guys have or the position that they are about to embark in. I've just been selected as the head football coach for the high school. So I'm going to take on that role. I've been coaching at the high school, either football or baseball, since about 1997 on and off. Did a little bit of college coaching at Shippensburg University. Figured I needed one more thing to do. So threw my name in the ring to be the head coach. And I'll say, not about me, it was about the kids and the kids we have and the kids in the community, and hoping to give back and bring some more wins into the program. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, policy and legislation, 4 separate motions, seconds, and hopefully votes here. Item 11.01, policy 204, attendance. Motion and second to approve the first reading of policy 204, attendance, please.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McKee, second by Dr. Diller. Questions or discussions? All those in favor signify by, oh, I'm sorry.
What are we on?
11.01.
Okay, all right, yes, yeah, sorry.
Are you using your nonsense words again?
I was on it, I was on it.
Come on.
I do, before you guys vote, I do just,
We're soon to hit the 3-hour mark, so it's excused. You're okay, Mr. Long.
Put your glasses down, Lance.
I know.
I do want to thank Dr. Long and Heidi Manier, our attendance director, so to speak. She picked up the duty, and they really jumped in the attendance bucket and are doing some really great work. This policy is supporting the continued work in attendance as well as a whole host of other areas. So I'm just very happy that we did it, and I'm happy they're following through and coming with actions to you to really help our district. So thanks to everyone for the work to get started on attendance.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it and so moved. Item 11.02, policy 239, foreign exchange student. Motion and second to approve first reading of policy 239, foreign exchange students, please.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Dr. Diller, second by Mr. Haydick. Questions, discussions?
I just have a question for the public's information. We don't have the ability to accept these visas. Did we at one point have that ability?
I think in history, yes.
What changed?
I think this is alignment with the program, correct?
Correct.
The programs that provide foreign exchange students require this, and our policy was outdated.
Correct. We have a J1 status for our district.
Right.
We do not have an F1, and the J1 has quite a few things that are listed, and secondary school student is one of them. but an F1 has changed now with the new administration that it has to go through a different process for approval, but also it's just a whole different visa. It mainly focuses on university.
Uh-huh.
And it's nothing connected to any executive orders or any changes?
No,
This
I
was-
didn't
Well,
think
I've
so.
already been asked by the news and the press, that question.
Well,
So there's nothing related to
Then
that?
everybody knows.
Correct,
Yep.
correct.
I mean, the only change is that it was approval through the Attorney General, and now it is through Immigration and Customs.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, so moved. Item 11.03, this is the second reading of Policy 226, searches. Motion, can I have a motion and second to approve the second reading of Policy 226, please?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McKee, second by Ms. Harbaugh. Questions or discussions?
Yes, I have a question, and I will use my sense words now. I was reading over that, and I don't know, maybe Mr. Carter could help me out with it. The searches as far as the technology, electronic devices and whatnot, how far is that able to go as far as going into the students' phones?
No. All it does is it's a walkthrough, it's a scan, and it's a scan for ferrous metals. So it's called a weapons detection system, but it's actually looking for the metals used in weapons, knives, guns. It does detect metals in cell phones, lunch boxes, Chromebooks, but it's not going in any devices. There's no technology involved in it other than the scan of the ferrous metal.
Okay, maybe I'm on the wrong one, and I apologize. Maybe that was for the canine search. I was reading over the policies on that about the electronics and whatnot, and I didn't know how far that was able to go. That's why
So you're actually talking about if you're talking about technology, as far as if we have an investigation, and there's some kind of a photograph, some kind of a threat, that's something that it depends on probable cause as far as policing goes. Administratively, there's some searches that they can do, but normally we don't get involved in search through phones. If there's a picture on there, parents are normally involved, that would be deleted, things like that. But if we had probable cause as a police department, we could actually seize a phone and do a search warrant depending on the search, or depending on the crime that we're saying was that they were involved in. But normally, it's very seldom that we actually take that technology and do that. We do have a platform in the district that if they're using a district device for any kind of threats or sending any kind of pictures, that we could actually secure that through our district technology department. So it's really few and far between, but we do have those capabilities. But fortunately, we haven't had to do that very much in the district.
I was there. That was my concerns. I didn't know. I'm glad it's through the police. I didn't know if that was giving admin or whoever ability to go through.
No, they still operate on reasonable suspicion. We still operate on probable cause.
Okay. All right.
And this policy is updated just because of the ferrous metal detection systems we purchased.
Okay.
That's really the only change we brought.
Okay.
Good question, good discussions. Any other questions or comments, discussions? Okay, then we need a vote. Item 11.03, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, and so moved. Item 11.04, second reading, new policy 226.1, canine searches. Motion and second to approve second reading of policy 226.1, please.
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Gogler, second by Dr. Diller. Questions or discussions on item 11.04? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it, and so moved. Item 12, new business. I mentioned this briefly in my president's report, that I wanted to talk about this. Chris mentioned it in his superintendent's report, and we didn't even talking about it ahead of time. But I wanted to bring this up in discussion. It sounds like it's already on Chris's agenda. This is one of my goals or desires, I should say, back when we did board reorganization in December, was to review this plus X policy. The X historically has been 1%, but I still say X because it can be whatever the board decides. So I guess, and I wanted to do it in the same light. I wanted to do it ahead of our budget vote, and it sounds like that's what your timeline is. So I'll maybe turn it back over to you, and you probably answered the question and tell us when it's on the next agenda.
Our pre-plan was to bring the proposed final budget and then that resolution at the same meeting, as well as PFM to bring updates on our bonding scenarios as we get closer to borrowing for the grade configuration. So we're going to try to continue to package those items together. That way you see them as connected and not separate.
Okay, so we'll be seeing the presentations on this
April.
as we see the various budgets. Okay.
Yep.
And just a little bit of a history for the board, and Mrs. Stauffer, correct me if I'm wrong, I'll paraphrase it. The current resolution, it's centered around this plus X goes to capital reserve. And the question that I have for the board is, do we want to change this resolution to debt service, i.e. $170 million in upcoming building projects? So, okay, that was my one item. Any other board members? Any items for new business discussion only this evening? Okay. You see the information items on the bottom of the sheet. And with that, our meeting's adjourned. Thank you.